So we had, I guess, a routine briefing from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. What did we learn, Enda?
Well, David, they really left us guessing. We didn't get any details on the retaliation, when it will come or how it will come, other than being told to stay tuned. Now, we have seen this in previous cycles of tariff spats where China promised immediate retaliation, but they held back for a little while until they calibrated things. There's a view among observers that perhaps they were waiting to see how the talks go in the White House or go in Washington today between Vice Premier Liu and his U.S. counterparts. But, when you see those tweets in the U.S. morning from President Trump today, I think the message from the US side is very clear. It doesn't sound like a deal is imminent, so China are probably lining up their retaliation and to have it ready to go as soon as possible.
So, Enda, we've been reading stories about the types of measures that China could take because they don't import enough stuff from the United States to exactly match tariff $1 per $1. So what are some of the other measures that China might be even thinking about at this point?
Exactly right, Lisa. So they can't match the US dollar for dollar. So then we go into the world of non-tariff barriers. And I mean, the obvious one would be stopping outright purchases of US goods, in particular the farm goods. We had a bit of that last year, remember, with the soybean story. China could easily pull that lever again. But they could also make business much more complicated for American companies operating in China. They can slow down investment approvals, they can ramp up inspections, they can renege on whatever promises they've made so far to open up the economy to foreign competition. And then, of course, we get into the world of financial markets. And if you park treasuries to one side for the moment, which most people would say is a nuclear option, they can probably let the yuan soften a little bit, Lisa, but the question there is by how much can they let it soften before that too starts to trigger broader instability. So they have some options up their cards, but up their sleeve, I should say, but they certainly can't match the US dollar for dollar on the tariff front.
So, and what have they done so far? It appeared, at least overnight, that they did intervene. They had some state purchases into the stock market over there, because we really saw just about a V in the performance of the stock market. What about the yuan? It seems to have strengthened, but I think not weakened.
Well, certainly on the equity side, you're absolutely right, David. Our colleagues were reporting earlier that the state-backed funds did come in to support stock prices, the famous Team China. That's not unusual. We've seen that before in episodes of severe volatility. But the yuan is the big unknown in all of this. It's still up around 7% from, say, over the past year, even despite having a pretty torrid week. I think a lot of economists were saying now that the currency could start to weaken over coming weeks and months, and China will be happy to let it soften a bit, David. But it goes back to what I said to you earlier. Then the question becomes, how far will they let it go? Will they let it go past the 7 mark against the dollar? Because that's a big psychological level where you could see the whole capital outflow story start to emerge again. So I would say, of all the variables to keep an eye on, the yuan against the politically sensitive dollar is the all-important one.
So, Enda, I want to talk about the whole idea of buy the news, sell the rumor. And I'm wondering, people are saying, well, they're 3 weeks before the U.S.'s increased tariffs actually get implemented. I'm wondering, are you seeing anything optimistic, either coming out of the Chinese government or President Trump, that leads you to believe that within the next few weeks before these tariffs actually go into effect, we're going to get some sort of truce here?
Yeah, I have seen that line as well, Lisa. Investors are still saying that, the 3 weeks that it will take goods to leave, to get to the US from leaving China today could be the window to get a deal done. But, the mood music isn't pointing that way. China would have sent their vice premier to Washington in the hope that whatever was in his briefcase was a material offer in which the US would meet him halfway. That clearly hasn't worked. The tariffs have gone up, and it's quite a rebuff for China to have their vice premier in Washington at a time when both the tariffs have gone up and now we've had this latest stream of comments from President Trump. So I would say we're looking at something probably of a recalibration on the China side. We're not yet at the point where negotiations have fallen through or anything. Clearly they're still going, but you'd have to say the next few hours in Washington will be pretty critical to determine where the next phase goes in all of this. Can these talks continue, or are we at something of a rupture point?